All right, so we're back, and we're ready for another deep dive. And this time we're going to be looking at something pretty sensitive.
Yeah.
We got a Reddit thread sent in, and phew, this one's a heavy one.
hmm
It's about a young woman who's looking for advice about intimacy after experiencing FGM.
Yeah, it's a Reddit post, so you really get this, raw honesty, and you really see someone grappling with like a really difficult situation. And
Absolutely.
I think it's a reality that many people might not even, know exists.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get right into it. So we're looking at a thread that was started by an 18-year-old woman who underwent type 2 FGM as a child.
Okay.
And for those who might not be familiar with that, type 2 FGM involves the removal of the clitoris and the inner labia, which are those folds of skin surrounding the vaginal opening. And she's now in a loving relationship and wants to be intimate with her boyfriend.
Right.
But she's hitting some major roadblocks.
Yeah, and they're both physical and emotional. She describes in the thread, experiencing nerve pain where her clitoris used to be. And that's something that her doctor is trying to manage with medication.
Yeah.
But, the pain is deeper than that. She talks about a lack of arousal and pleasure. And that's likely, a combination of those physical changes and the emotional trauma that's associated with the experience.
It's heartbreaking to read about. And then it gets even more complicated when she brings up like that cultural pressure to remain pure.
Right.
Like even though her own mother is against FGM, she still feels the weight of those expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you imagine trying to navigate all those complex emotions while also figuring out intimacy?
Yeah, it's a really challenging situation, and I think it's important to remember that FGM is often rooted in the idea of controlling women's sexuality. So it's really tied to these harmful cultural norms that equate, a woman's worth with her virginity.
Yeah.
And so her story, this young woman's story, really shows that lasting impact these practices have even when they're, legally abolished.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I found really fascinating about this thread was just like how it blew up with responses.
Right.
Like people are offering advice, they're sharing their personal stories, they're just pouring out support.
Right.
I mean, it really speaks to this shared experience of women, I think, globally.
I think that's right. And the variety of advice is really insightful, right?
Yeah.
So some people suggest practical solutions like reconstructive surgery, which aims to rebuild the clitoris and labia, or, even therapy to process the emotional trauma.
Yeah, therapy is so important.
Right. Others stress the importance of open communication with her partner and really seeking, professional help to address both the emotional and the physical scars of FGM.
Yeah, it's incredible, honestly, like the outpouring of support that she's getting.
Yeah.
It's like people are sharing resources, they're
Yeah.
validating her feelings, they're reassuring her that she's not alone. It's like
Yeah.
there's this collective effort to challenge the cultural norms that allow FGM to continue. Like they're advocating for a world where women have control over their own bodies.
Yeah, and one of the comments that really stood out to me was from a woman who'd had a partial vulvectomy due to cancer.
Wow.
And she shares her experience, and she emphasizes that even with these physical changes, women can still have fulfilling sex lives.
That's so important.
And she encourages the original poster to explore her options and find peace with her body, which I think is just a really powerful message.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows there's not like a single answer here, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is different, and
Mhm.
finding what works takes time and patience and self-discovery.
That's right. And the thread also brings to light this potential role of, medical professionals.
Yeah.
So there was a commenter who works in gynecology who explains that achieving orgasm through internal stimulation is possible even after certain types of FGM,
Wow.
which I think really opens up new avenues for exploration and offers like a sense of hope.
That's so important to hear. And there's another commenter who had a similar experience to the original poster, and they strongly advocated for therapy, emphasizing how crucial it is to address that emotional trauma that's associated with FGM.
Right.
They even offered like personal advice on navigating intimacy, suggesting techniques and products that might help. It's just like so inspiring to see this level of compassion and willingness to share like personal experiences to help someone else.
Yeah, I think that's right. And this conversation, I think, underscores a much bigger issue, which is that, FGM is a global problem with serious consequences.
Hmm.
The World Health Organization classifies it as a violation of human rights, and there are countless organizations that are working tirelessly to eliminate it.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we can't just focus on individual experiences. We have to acknowledge the systemic problem and fight for change.
Absolutely. This deep dive really emphasizes the need for continued education and advocacy, to
Hmm.
break the cycle of harm and empower women to make choices about their bodies and their lives. We
Right.
need to keep having these conversations.
I agree.
And platforms like Reddit, I think, can be incredibly powerful for raising awareness and connecting people who've experienced these kinds of traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that even though we're dealing with a difficult subject, there's always hope.
Hmm.
And I think the outpouring of support in this thread really proves that even when faced with adversity, people care.
Yeah.
And there are resources available to help. It reminds us that we're all connected and that by sharing our experiences and supporting each other, we can create a more compassionate and understanding world.
I love that.
I think the things that's really striking about this thread is just her honesty. She
Yeah.
admits to feeling like less of a woman because of what she went through.
Yeah.
And it really reflects how, deeply ingrained those societal pressures are and those misconceptions about female sexuality.
It's so tough to read.
Yeah.
But it also highlights why it's so important to challenge those very notions. Yeah. Her story, I think, sparked a really important conversation about consent and body autonomy and the right to pleasure, regardless of cultural norms or, past experiences.
Absolutely. And, the thread doesn't just stop at individual experiences. It goes
Mhm.
on to explore those wider implications of FGM,
Mhm.
prompting these discussions about human rights violations and the role of education in stopping these practices, and the responsibility of, individuals and communities to protect girls who are vulnerable.
Yeah, there were several commenters who pointed out the patriarchal systems that fuel these practices.
Right.
And they talked about that power imbalance between men and women in many societies and how FGM is used to control women's bodies and limit their, sexual agency.
Yeah, and one commenter even made this comparison between FGM and child marriage,
Wow.
emphasizing this disturbing pattern of, controlling women's sexuality under the guise of tradition or religion,
Ugh.
which is a
Yeah.
crucial point, right? It's
Yeah.
like FGM is often
Mhm.
justified as a cultural or religious practice, but, we have to recognize those harmful intentions that are behind these justifications.
You're right. And thankfully, so many commenters push back against those narratives.
Yes.
Like, they challenge the idea that FGM is rooted in any kind of legitimate religious or cultural belief,
Right.
highlighting the fact that it is a violation of human rights
Yeah.
and it's a form of gender-based violence.
And it's fascinating to see the debate about, men's role in combating FGM.
Yeah.
So some commenters argued that, men need to be more active in challenging these practices within their communities,
Hmm.
while others pointed out that, oftentimes the decision to perform FGM lies with, older women in the family.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a complex issue with these, layers of influence.
For sure. And one commenter even suggested that the original poster's boyfriend should go to like a doctor's appointment with her
Oh,
to
wow.
better understand the physical and emotional, complexities of her situation.
That's a really good suggestion.
Right. Which, that just shows how important open communication and that shared understanding are in a relationship.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the personal level,
Yeah.
Even with the heaviness of this topic, the thread is filled with messages of hope and encouragement for the original poster.
I love that.
Yeah, people are sharing their own stories of resilience and reminding her that she can still have a fulfilling life and find love and experience intimacy on her own terms.
There was this one comment that was so uplifting from a woman who had a double mastectomy.
Wow.
And she reminded the original poster that, physical differences don't define womanhood.
Yeah.
And she emphasized that shared strength and resilience of women who have faced, bodily challenges.
That's beautiful. And, it's not just about finding a romantic partner either.
Right.
Several commenters encouraged the original poster to focus on her own pleasure and explore her sexuality in ways that feel safe and comfortable for her.
Yeah.
Regardless of, her relationship status, it's about reclaiming that agency and defining intimacy on her own terms.
It's truly inspiring to see this level of support and solidarity among strangers online.
Yeah.
They're offering practical advice and emotional validation and just this sense of community, which can be so powerful for someone navigating a challenging situation like this.
And the thread also highlights the importance of, seeking professional help.
Yeah.
So several commenters suggested therapists specializing in, sexual trauma, recognizing that healing from FGM often involves addressing the emotional and psychological scars alongside those physical ones.
Absolutely. And they even shared resources for finding support groups and online communities where survivors of FGM can connect with others who understand their experiences.
Right.
It's a reminder that, even though this journey can feel isolating, there are these networks of support that are available.
Yeah.
It's about, finding that strength in those shared experiences and knowing that you're not alone.
That's right. And one commenter even shared a link to an article about, ongoing trials for clitoral stimulation therapy for women who've undergone FGM.
Wow.
So it offers like a glimmer of hope,
Yeah.
pointing to, the potential for medical advancements to improve the lives of those who've been affected by this practice.
It's remarkable to think that even in the face of such a, deeply rooted and harmful tradition,
Yeah.
that there are people who are dedicated to finding solutions and offering hope for healing.
Right.
It speaks to like the power of human ingenuity and compassion.
I agree.
One of the things that really struck me as I was reading through the comments was this emphasis on communication and patience. Like so many people stressed how important it is for the original poster to be open with her boyfriend about her needs and her limits,
Right.
and for him to be understanding and supportive throughout this process.
That's such a fundamental element of any healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But it becomes even more crucial in a situation like this, It's about creating a safe space where both partners feel comfortable expressing, their desires and concerns and exploring different options and ultimately finding a path to intimacy that works for both of them.
Yeah, and some commenters even suggested bringing in like a therapist or a counselor to help facilitate those conversations, especially if the couple is struggling to communicate effectively on their own.
Right.
It's a good reminder that, professional guidance can be an invaluable tool when navigating these kinds of sensitive topics and building a stronger relationship.
Absolutely. And it's not just about talking, right?
Right.
Many commenters offered, practical suggestions for enhancing intimacy that don't just revolve around penetration.
Yeah.
So they talked about exploring, different types of touch and experimenting with toys and prioritizing activities that bring both partners pleasure, regardless of any physical limitations.
Yeah, there was one commenter who shared that she had a similar experience to the original poster.
Okay.
And she even offered specific techniques and products that had worked for her.
Wow.
It just goes to show, the power of that shared knowledge and lived experience.
And what's also interesting is this discussion around the concept of, internal orgasms.
Yeah.
So some commenters who work in, the medical field explain that it's possible for some women to achieve orgasm through internal stimulation even after certain types of FGM.
That's interesting.
Which, challenges that misconception that sexual pleasure is solely dependent on the clitoris and opens up these new possibilities for exploration and pleasure.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that everybody is different. And what works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
It's about discovering what feels good for you and finding ways to experience pleasure that align with your individual needs and your preferences.
And even if achieving orgasm isn't possible or desired, I think the thread really emphasizes that intimacy can still be incredibly fulfilling and meaningful.
Yeah.
It's about that connection and the communication and the shared experiences and finding those different ways to, express love and affection.
One commenter put it so beautifully.
Yeah.
They said that, sex doesn't have to be a thing where you only give, but rather an equal and reciprocal experience within a partnership.
That's powerful.
Right. And that's such a powerful message that I think applies to all relationships, regardless of individual circumstances.
So what can our listener take away from all of this?
Well, I think this deep dive into, this Reddit thread really reveals just the complexities of navigating intimacy after FGM.
Yeah.
And it highlights those physical and emotional challenges and the cultural stigma that often surrounds it and the importance of communication and support and ultimately the possibility of healing and finding pleasure on one's own terms.
I think that's beautifully said.
It's a reminder that everyone's experience is unique and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's about challenging those harmful norms and seeking professional help when needed, and fostering open and honest communication with your partner.
And for those who haven't personally experienced FGM, it's a call to action. to educate ourselves about this global issue and support organizations that are working to eradicate the practice
Yes.
and advocate for the rights and well-being of all women and girls.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
How can we, as individuals and as a society, contribute to a world where every woman and girl is empowered to make choices about her own body, to experience pleasure without fear or shame, and to live a life free from violence and oppression?
It's a question that deserves our attention and action.
Yeah, it really does. And the stories shared in this Reddit thread are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but they also underscore that urgent need for change.
Right.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into such a complex and sensitive topic.
It's been a pleasure.
If this conversation resonated with you and you'd like to explore more like it, we encourage you to check out our podcast, Voices of the Soul,
All right.
where we delve into a wide range of personal experiences and social issues.
And be sure to subscribe to the Shauna Pelage YouTube channel for more insightful content on these important topics.
Yes, your support helps us reach a wider audience and continue these crucial conversations.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and remember, you're not alone on this journey.